So let's just call it what it is. It's not the most sexy part of business. When you hear, it's not the most sexy part, but it's the most crucial and important part. Because here's the thing, you hear about sales, you hear about marketing and this tactic or that thing people are doing to drive in more revenue, this thing they're doing to get more customers. Everybody wants to talk about that. Everybody wants to, pay attention to that. But this is actually, if you do it the wrong way, it can actually be boring and, take a long time. And so people just end up procrastinating and then they don't do it. And you even have situations where companies can get so large and they don't have procedures or processes in place because they just have relied on people just having it in their head, and they've gotten by doing that. But eventually they get to a point where the thing just breaks and you can't move forward anymore because you can't just depend on it being stuck in people's heads, right? Or so the thing I'm trying to do in this interview is literally give listeners a framework on how to get started documenting procedures, and also have the employees be part of that process, and then incentivize the employees to be part of that process, so that the culture at the company now becomes a thing where everybody is all involved in this continuous improvement, and it's not a thing where it's just solely dependent on you or solely dependent on one manager.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Mary Lou Kaiser here. Welcome to today's episode of the Play Your Position podcast. I have a great guest with me today because it is game day here at PYP, and he's suited up. He's ready to take the field. He's going to bring us into his leadership journey, the work he's doing to help people have better businesses, have better lives, and all that good stuff that comes out when we get into the deep conversations here at PYP. His name is Owen McGab Enaohwo. Owen, are you ready for kickoff?
Yes, Mary Lou, I am excited and ready for kickoff. Let's go.
Let's go. I love the enthusiasm. So, team, here's what I know about Owen. He is the CEO and co-founder of SweetProcess, an easy-to-use software that enables company executives and their employees to collaborate together to quickly document and or improve their standard operating procedures, processes, and policies. He was previously the CEO of Hire Your Virtual Assistant, which was a virtual assistant service for small business owners. His specialties include business development, negotiation, operations management, and more. He's talking to us today from the beautiful state of Maryland. And Owen, I know you have a lot to share with us, so let's get right to it. Starting right out of the gate, tell us your story of when you got the call to leadership. How old were you? What was going on in your life? Do you remember a specific moment, or was it something that evolved over time?
So I would say it's a combination of both. It's something that evolved over time. But I remember years back when my dad died, and I was still in college back home in Nigeria, and something in my sleep. I used to be this carefree, teenager, just, do whatever you like, didn't really care about, thinking about, long term and all that. But then when he died, something in my sleep, I think, probably, I think he was speaking to me, say, hey, I'm leaving you and your mom and your siblings. You're the oldest, and you are going to be, in charge. So I woke up in a dream. Woke up to my mom, yelling and screaming and, all that, because he was, sick. And so he passed on, right? So I knew in my heart then that, things had changed. So from that very point, I saw that I had to be a leader. I was no longer only just thinking about myself. I had to think about myself, my mom, my siblings, and so on and so forth. But that was even before thinking of leadership as a business owner. And then move forward into coming to the US because I had to come here for college, and then, starting school here, but realizing that, I'm the oldest. So I'm basically the pioneers, setting standards in the family so that everybody's looking up to you because, you're the leader of the family and now you're not even at home, you're in the foreign country, so everybody's looking up to you. So that I've always had, since that point on, had this whole idea that, I have to lead. And then starting the business, realizing that in order for me to get my goal of, what I want to achieve in my business, I literally have to help people who are working for me achieve whatever personal goals they want to get, but also help them in the sense of giving them all the tools they need to get to be successful and staying out of the way. Because that whole idea where people think they're the boss or you do it my way or the highway kind of thing, coming in until you start a business, then you realize that you're really here to serve people. And the more you're serving your clients, you're serving your investors. If you have investors, you're serving your employees. And the more you serve them and help them achieve their goal, eventually behind the scenes, you actually get to achieve your goal. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. You had one of those, I call them the inciting incidents. Your father died. And I think it's fascinating that the message came to you in a dream. It's not something dreams and those, what some people might call more mystical forces, the energies in the world that aren't obvious, like a system in a tech system, for example. And that's the business that you're in, working with processes and things like that. And yet here was this message saying, Owen, your life will be different from now on. Dad and it's interesting too that he actually spoke to you. And that's it's a powerful story. And thank you for sharing something so personal with us. I think those are the stories that remind us that we are all human, and it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day processes of living and running businesses and raising children, if that's the direction people go. And sometimes we do need to step back and have a conversation like you had with yourself, saying, wow, it's not just about me anymore. It's about everybody else that matters to me. And so how long have you been living in the United States? When did you come here?
So I think I came here 2002, the year after September 11, right? Because I remember it clearly how, after September 11, it became so hard to come into the US. So the whole process for getting visas and all that was just, totally different from, especially if you're trying to come here as a student and also even to travel and all that. So it was so clear in my mind that, I had to go through a whole different new process after that period just to get in here as a student on an F1 visa.
And where did you attend college?
Oh, so I came in and I started out, at Texas Tech. But then I stayed there for a year. I moved over to Maryland and came here to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC. And so I did graduated with a computer science degree. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So you've been here 20 years and certainly have seen the rise of technology and how integrated it has become in our lives, which I imagine stimulated you to create SweetProcess. So tell us about your business, Owen. What motivated you? What problem were you seeing in the world? And you said, you know what, I can make a business out of this.
Okay, so I'm going to take it back a little bit before even SweetProcess started. Because, as with all entrepreneurs, we all have different journeys where we start one thing and then we go to the next thing. Because my story in entrepreneurship, especially in the US, is not linear. It's like a bunch of different things. So I went into real estate at one point, and then from there I went into basically outsourcing, where I was providing people here in the US with virtual assistant and back office staff. And this was also, just to give the listeners some chronicle of stuff, SweetProcess started in the fourth quarter of 2013. And before that, I was running this outsourcing business where I had an agency and I had virtual assistants that were working on behalf of my client. And what happened was, this period, it was exciting because people had read the books like The 4-Hour Work Week and The World is Flat. And then these small to medium-sized business owners realized that, they can actually get a pool of labor, people to do work for them from, English-speaking countries abroad at a cheaper price than they could do, hiring people here. Because back then they used to think it was only the bigger companies that would go and just hire hundreds of people to go and do their customer service and stuff like that. You think of the phone companies and all that. But when these books came out, it opened people to the idea that, hey, even you as a small business owner could do this. But the issue they had was, the book sold them on all the hype. Think of the 4-hour work week. People literally thought they could work 4 hours in a week, right?
And so, not true.
And so they've been sold on the hype. They reach out to people like us who are trying to provide the service, and then they come with this preconceived notion that magically someone in a different country speaking a different language, which English might maybe not be the first language they speak, and in a different time zone, can do the work for them the way they would want it to do, get it done, just right out of the gate. But what I had to do when I got the clients was help to educate them that, hey, there's a process where we have to go through delegating the work to the people that will be assigned to you to do the work. But in order to delegate the work properly, there needs to be standard operating procedures. So think of procedures or checklists on how these tasks are done. And I also had to help them determine, okay, what is the first biggest bottleneck of your task that you do every day that we need to first of all start by identifying that and then documenting how the work was done. So what we would do back in the day was we'd meet on not Zoom like we're meeting on Zoom, but then it was Skype. Skype was the rage, right? So we'll meet on Skype, and then we'll have a recording where we're recording our screen over. My teammate will be recording their screen, and then the client will go through step by step, talk about that specific task that they want to give us to handle on their behalf. And then behind the scenes, we'll take that recording. Someone else on my team will take that recording and turn it into a step-by-step procedure. But here was the issue. The issue we're having was that the tools that were available to document these procedures were either they were enterprise level tools made for the bigger, large enterprise companies, and so they were hard to use, or we were just basically hacking together a bunch of different tools that were not necessarily built for what we're trying to do. And so in my mind, I was like, there has to be a better option on how to do this. But we got by. But then I was invited to a podcast, similar to this one, Mixergy, by Andrew Warner. Andrew Warner is the host. And I was brought on there to teach people how to, document procedures and how to, kind of get things out of their heads and put into procedural documents based on what I was actually doing in my agency. And so my co-founder listened to that podcast. My co-founder, Jervis, all the way from Australia. He, at the time, was a programmer, I think, for an agency or something like that. And now he's the CTO and co-founder at SweetProcess. So he reached out to me and said, hey, he has this idea of building an app kind of similar to some of the things I was talking about in the podcast. And he wanted to share, get my insight. And so, I was open to the conversation. And after having the conversation, when I was like, dude, this guy is essentially trying to build a software that solves the problem I literally have in my business right now, right? So I said, you know what, instead of just giving you advice on how to do this, why don't we just, go ahead and build it together, right? And so I said, but, before we build it together, one of the things I want us to do is, spend more time trying to have conversations with people so that we can understand this problem. Because I have my own perspective, but, the more we understand this problem from, a bunch of different entrepreneurs and their companies and how this issue is an issue to them, then we can bring all these insights and be able to determine the root issues from the standpoint of documenting how work is done and having that single place people can go and find instructions. And then we can build according to, the problem itself and avoid a lot of feature bloat where the software becomes as difficult as the ones I was already using to do this stuff. And so he agreed. And I spent maybe a month or so having interviews with potential customers. And then we were able to synthesize all the different things they were telling us and use that as the basis to then create the first version of the software. And so now SweetProcess has over 2,000 or so companies using SweetProcess. The typical company has anywhere from 20 all the way to like 100, even more employees using SweetProcess. We have banks using SweetProcess. We have churches using SweetProcess to manage their volunteers. We have school districts using SweetProcess. We have hospitals using SweetProcess, so on and so forth. Because the reality is that, when you have work that you have, operations that need to be done by people, you need to have, these things documented and in a single place people can find them, right, when they need them to do their work. Because, if without those, people make mistakes and the work doesn't get done the way you want it to get done. So that's the backstory of SweetProcess.
It's an incredible story for so many reasons. I was struck by your comment about the enterprise level systems that were presented to everyone back in those early days of the 2010s when the internet was really coming on strong. People started to see the social channels. Amazon was growing. There was so much growth. And I remember being at some kind of conference, and I won't name the enterprise level company, but they were there. They were a sponsor, and there was the founder was speaking to us from the stage. And I remember them saying, well, if you want to take a look and take it for a test drive, here's the code, or, to get in and go get your free trial and stuff. And I went in there, Owen, and I'm looking at this going, oh my goodness, no way. This is first of all, way too robust for what I needed and extremely complex. And I'm thinking, I'm going to spend all my time managing this.
And you would need to pay them to teach you how to use the software.
Right. And that I've had conversations over the years here at PYP with people who, like you, see how many businesses are missing their SOPs. Mm-hmm. They never, and I know one of the problems that companies have is when one of the people, or a senior leader or executive, gets to the age where they're ready to leave. And we saw a big exodus because of the pandemic. A lot of people who were close to that traditional retirement age said, you know what? I think I'm just going to leave now. Well, guess what? They left with all their knowledge.
All the knowledge gone.
and then as things started to open up again and we moved forward, because that's what life does. It always moves forward. It doesn't go backwards. It moves forward. Then companies, again, I've heard this I've seen it on LinkedIn, people writing about it. And I've talked to people who are in companies or serve companies like you do, saying, and say it's John. Well, John is now traveling around in an RV and we can't get a hold of John, and we don't know it, and it's a big problem. So SweetProcess, it sounds to me, serves a huge need. And what would you say, what is the bottleneck that keeps small businesses from putting their SOPs together? What have you seen? What's a pattern over and over again?
So let's just call it what it is. It's not the most sexy part of business. When you hear, it's not the most sexy part, but it's the most crucial and important part. Because here's the thing, you hear about sales, you hear about marketing and this tactic or that thing people are doing to driving more revenue, this thing they're doing to get more customers. Everybody wants to talk about that. Everybody wants to pay attention to that. But this is actually, if you do it the wrong way, it can actually be boring and, take a long time. And so people just end up procrastinating and then they don't do it. And you even have situations where companies can get so large and they don't have, procedures or processes in place because they just have relied on, people just, having it in their head. And they've gotten by doing that. But eventually they get to a point where the thing just breaks and you can't move forward anymore because you can't just depend on it being stuck in people's heads, right? Or, so the thing I'm trying to do in this interview is literally give listeners a framework on how to, get started documenting procedures and also have the employees be part of that process and incentivize the employees to be part of that process so that the culture at the company now becomes a thing where, everybody is all involved in this continuous improvement. And it's not a thing where it's just solely dependent on you or solely dependent on one manager. And so if you want, we can go ahead and talk about the framework on how to get started.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's pretend that you're talking to a group of people like you just described. What would you take us through?
Okay, so the very first thing I would say is, yes, now you're bought into the idea of, hey, you want to document procedures. Might be because you want to sell your business and you realize that there's more value if your business has, these documents in place versus a company that doesn't have that. Or it might be because you want to, stop doing all the work. You don't want to be the bottleneck. You really want to make sure things, you can bring in people to do the work and you can have more free time to work on the business. So whatever the reason is, you have now arrived at this point. So the first thing I would tell you is, instead of going ahead to start documenting procedures, I would say, let's look at what you have been doing so far. that, especially the tasks that you do on a recurring basis, and determine which ones to eliminate. Yeah, which ones to eliminate, because I don't want you documenting procedures for everything. Because here's the thing is people have this whole tribal knowledge thing where this is how we've always done things, and they don't have this crucial conversation with themselves, asking themselves, do we really need to keep doing things this way? Do we need to even document it? Now, once you have this conversation with yourself and your team on this, you can determine which tasks that you need to eliminate altogether. Now, let's assume you've done that now. You're now left with the tasks that you cannot eliminate. They are actually required for your company to run and operate. And now these tasks, we want to break them down into two sets. The first ones are recurring tasks that are production level tasks. And then those recurring tasks that are like, the sexy ones, like the sales and marketing ones, the ones that bring in all the, the new customers and all that. People might be excited to start documenting those, income generating tasks like the sales and marketing ones that bring in new customers. But I'll say, hold off on that first, because if you do that and you actually are successfully documenting that, then you'll be tempted to start bringing more employees to follow the system you've created to bring in more customers. But yes, guess what? They're going to have more customers being angry at the fact that, production is, not going the way it needs to go. So let's not annoy new customers. Let's hold off on that. So let's focus on the production side of things. And then let's identify the biggest bottleneck on the production side of things. What is the single biggest task that every time it's brought up that it needs to be done, it's just frustrating? Or the task that when it needs to be done, it takes too much time to try and figure out, how did we do it last time? Whatever the thing might be that allows you to say, this is a bottleneck, a real pain point. We need it documented. Identify that task. Once you've identified the task, now the first thing is, how do you document the task? I would say at the time when you are actually about to do the work is the best time to document it. People like, oh, how can I do it? I don't have enough time. No, this is what you do. The first thing you do is, you can use SweetProcess or whatever tool you have in mind, but just follow this framework. As you're about to do the task, open up a document and give the task a title. Say that how to do whatever you're trying to do. So the title of the procedure should be the title of whatever you're about to do. And so that anybody in your company looks at that, the title of the document, knows exactly what they can achieve when they follow the instructions. So as you are going through each step of the task, what you want to do is you want to say, step 1, give step 1 a title. Step 2, give step 2 a title. But here's the caveat. Do not enter any details into each step. What you're going to have at the end of this, you're working on the task and at the same time also documenting how the task is done. What you're going to have is what I call, in a fancy name, I call it the minimum viable procedure. It's just an outline or a skeleton draft of a procedure that just has the title of procedure and title of all the different steps. So if in this example, you are working on a task that has 10 different steps, by the time you're done, you would have a procedure that just has the title and the 10 different steps. That's it. So how do you go from that to something with more details and more things fleshed out? You then hand that document to your employees or your manager. Say, hey, the next time you're about to work on this task, open up this document, and all I want you to do is just fill in some details into each step. And the details don't have to be that much. Just some little snippets of something in there, be it text, be it some screenshot, be it a small video for that very step. Whatever you feel needs to go into that step, just put it in there. But even as you're trying to get buy-in from your employees, you need to tell them that, hey, it is okay for you to, for you to have this mindset that, hey, it's a continuous improvement. And when you tell your employees that this is going to be a continuous improvement project, right? It gives them the permission to know that, hey, we're starting from version 1, for version 0, and we're going to go through separate, multiple different versions. And each time the goal is to keep improving it from where we started. So remember how we started with the skeleton outline, right, of this document. And now your employees have this mindset of, continuous improvement. And so anytime they are working on that very task, they have that document right there in front of them. They go and enter in some details into each step. But guess what? You're also aware that, anytime they enter information into that document, you have to go into that document and look at it and see what they've added into it. And if it makes sense, then you either approve it or you even add more into it and you shape it even more so that while they're doing their part, as they're doing their own work and adding more details into it, you also have an eye on that document and looking at it, making sure that the document is improving and going, over time it's improving and getting from that very first level to a different level. And the reason why I say this needs to be right in front of them where they're doing the work is because a lot of times the insight that comes for the employee to improve a task, it comes when they're actually doing the work. It doesn't come when they are working together to collaborate together to document it. It comes when they're doing the work. So that's why this document needs to be right there in front of them so that they can pass that insight back to you. So now you follow that dance, you've documented the first procedure, employees are working with you to fill in the information, right? Now you identify the next biggest bottleneck in the operations. You do the same dance again, starting from the minimum viable procedure, do that same dance. Before you know, eventually you've documented a majority of the biggest bottlenecks in your production side of things. You can start doing the same thing now, looking at sales and the marketing and some of the income generating tasks, and start doing the same dance of documenting how it's done and collaborating with the relevant employees to fill out the details. Eventually, you now have a lot of these documents documented. You can start now, even if you wanted, to start bringing new employees to take over the task, knowing that they have the instructions in place on the sales and marketing side to carry out work and be effective. And then on the production side, there's a lot of documents in place where the production staff can also carry out tasks and be effective.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
I just want to ask a question about what kinds of business, does this work for both? It sounds more like a product-based business, like if I was a car manufacturer or widget creator. Does this work for a service-based business where somebody is offering a service but not a physical product?
It works for all types of business. Okay. Because at the end of the day, whether you're producing a physical widget or you're producing a service, there's a bunch of dance and steps you take to produce that action, right? And those steps, to a large extent, they tend to be recurring, they tend to be the same, right? So once that is the situation, then is now a thing of, okay, let's take the time to, document that dance that we do, that is always the same, and document them. Because we know, once we've, go ahead.
I was going to say that at some point, is the document done and there's no more addition? It's always being developed.
It's always been improved, because the idea is that, I give you an example. It might be a situation where when at the time you documented created the document, you had 10 steps in there. And then down the line, maybe an employee got this aha moment and realized that, hey, there's this new software technology that we can use to eliminate some of these manual steps. And now it's gone from 10 steps to maybe like 8 steps, because 2 of these big manual steps are now being done by a machine or whatever, right? And so it's because you are allowing your employees to contribute back to the actual way of how they do the task and pass that feedback back to you. That document keeps being improved over and over and over again. That's the whole goal.
Okay. And that's important to know, that there isn't a finite end in sight. It's we're going to get the base concepts here in place, and then it's up to employees to add bits and pieces in a consistent and continuous basis with the goal of always getting a little bit better. I was going to say, so what you've created at SweetProcess is the ability, it's a piece of software that a company can use to do what you just described, correct?
Exactly, because a lot of things that I described, you have to remember to go and get feedback from the employees, to remember that, when a task needs to be done, that document needs to be right there in front of them with the instructions, collecting the feedback from them as they're giving to you, going back to the underlying document to improve them. So there's a lot of manual things going on, but the software that we build puts it all together. But I'll get back to the software, because I still feel like I need to have some more information added. So some more points to the framework is that people might say, okay, I get the whole framework, but how do I get my employees involved in it? I give you 2 tips. First of all, you might need to incentivize your employees. You might need to make sure that, because they're paid to come in and do work, and now you're telling them, hey, I want you to get to spend additional time to document how we do work here, right? So you might run into some hesitation. So why don't you pay your employees to do that? right? Give them extra money that, hey, spend some time going through these documents that represent how you do your work and help to improve them. So incentivize them. Another thing you can do to try to change the character towards this is that every time an employee comes to you and say, hey, how do I do this? Your first response should be, assuming you're using SweetProcess, be like, have you checked SweetProcess? Right? Or your manager said the same thing. Have you checked SweetProcess? And so what happens now is that it now trains your employee that every time I have a question, I'm not going to get an answer. I'm going to go to my boss. They're going to ask me the same thing. Have I checked SweetProcess? So what happens in their mind subconsciously is that, hey, before they ask the boss or the manager a question, they need to go and check SweetProcess to see and search for whatever they're looking for to see if there's instructions already in there on how to do this. And so that trains them that this is the way it needs to go. And what also happens is that when they start searching SweetProcess, eventually they might come across something that they're searching for that is not even in existence because it's never been documented.
So then they can do it. They can start documenting that part.
They can start documenting it, or they can, use the system SweetProcess to request that the manager actually gets started on documenting this because it's not in there. So now I've shown you how, first of all, incentivize the employees, figure out a way to pay them to do this, and then also imbibe the habits in them that, hey, you can't come to me with a question. First of all, go look at the one single source of truth of how we do place your work. It's SweetProcess, go check it. And then the other thing that also helps subconsciously to put this in their minds is that now employees using a tool like SweetProcess, as they are working on a task, they can pass suggestions back to the manager, and the manager can fix the underlying document. All this is being tracked. So as an employee, you're using the document, you can see improvements that was made by your own fellow colleagues, suggestions that they made, conversations that they've made. You can see it literally in the document. So what does that tell you subconsciously? It's like, I need to also get my voice being heard here because, look at my colleague. My colleague here is giving all these good insights on how to improve our work. And I'm here just consuming the information. Subconsciously, they're like, okay, I want to stand out. Especially the ones that are proactive, that want to stand out. We also want to get into that as well. So I just give you some things that can help, with the getting employees involved in this. And finally, you also have to let the employees know that, hey, we're all about making sure that, we want to give you a great culture in this company. But what is the best culture you can actually have? It's not the one where you have a say in how you do your work. So what's the best way to have a say in how you do your work? Is by helping us improve the documents that instruct you on how to do your work. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to sell it that way. When you sell it that way, that, hey, the culture here is you have a say in how you do your work. And the best way to have a say in how you do your work is by helping us improve the document on how you do your work. I mean, problem solved to a large extent because it becomes clear as day that, this is why we need to do this. It's actually for your benefit. But if for some reason you don't have the ability for your employees to do this because maybe you can't implement any of the things I've suggested so far, there's another alternative. They call them process consultants. So process consultants, yes, for a fee, usually expensive. You're talking about like $5,000 a month or even more. They can come into your company, look through your systems, figure out where you have gaps in your operations, and then begin to help you use a software like ours, for instance, SweetProcess, to help you start documenting procedures. They help you go through that whole brainstorming and collation thing where they collect information from all your key players, and then they take that information and go behind the scenes and start documenting procedures on your behalf and upload it into a system like SweetProcess, and then your employees have that in place. But obviously, that's going to cost way more money than, if you try to use the tips and strategies I shared before to get your employees involved in this. But I wanted to share with the listeners all aspects to this so that they have everything ready at their fingertips.
Yeah, it's thank you for painting the big picture of and then taking us inside how this could work, what it might look like if a company owner decides to bring on a tool like SweetProcess. And it's definitely going back to what you started with. The operations side of the business is not the sexy side. It's not the side that you see, the colorful marketing materials or whatnot, but it is the foundation. It's the engine that keeps things running. Because if people are all over the place with, well, who do I talk to about this? And I like that you also emphasized the training aspect to teach people within a company where to go for information instead of always going to the top, or the founder, the leader, the CEO, or whoever it may be. And if it's a smaller business, it's not like an Apple or Google where there's a huge number of different channels already in place. You're serving organizations that may, probably a little bit more chaotic and perhaps slower to transition into a digital world. And we're still doing that, even though technology, I was just speaking with a man last week, and I asked him about where do you think we are technologically? He says, we're stable. Like, things are in place. We have platforms now. People know what platforms to use. We're not going to see another Google just show up and take over. Like, Google is it right now, right? For search engine. And the phones, we've pretty much figured out you're going to be Android or Apple. The social media platforms, you're going to be on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or combination of, you're going to be a YouTuber or you're going to be a podcast. I mean, it's like that whole chaotic figuring things out, that's behind us now. Now we're at a point where you, as a business owner, as a creator of SweetProcess, and everybody else who's now saying, how do we operate within this environment we have built? And that is a huge learning curve. People are, I can't tell you, I know people in my life who still refuse to use a computer, Owen. They just won't do it. And I'm thinking, okay, that's fine if that's your choice. Maybe you don't need a computer, or you don't need to how to use a computer. You can outsource that to somebody in your family or somebody in your life that knows if you have to do something online, like DMV, for example, or filling out a form prior to going to see a dentist, whatever it might be, right? But this whole notion of, it also stems from this trend that we've seen also in the 2010s, the last decade or so, where becoming an entrepreneur was the thing. All of a sudden, everybody wanted to be an entrepreneur. I remember a time when the big message was become a rock star. Like, that was the goal. You're going to form a band and you're going to go out and you're going to be the next Led Zeppelin, for example, or you're going to be the next hip hop group out, like Boys to Men or, Snoop Dogg or somebody, right? Those dreams are there. Now people want to go on The Voice. They don't want, that's the path. So things are always evolving. Well, everybody can't be the founder. You've got to have people to run the business that is found, right? Yeah. And I'm curious, who, you obviously have a front row seat to this because you ran a virtual assistant business. Are there really people out there who want to do that kind of work, that like to do that kind of work, that are really excited about systems and processes?
Well, there is a certain type of person that likes this kind of work. That they live and breathe systems. For instance, like personally, my thing is, if I go to like a restaurant, for instance, I'm not so keen on the food that I'm getting, but I'm keen on the experience. How, so I'm there thinking, like, what are the different things they put in place behind the scenes to make sure that I'm being delivered this experience, right? So I tend to like to watch like a lot of manufacturing, like how do they manufacture this and stuff like that. So people that have this mindset of wanting to know the systems behind things. A lot of times too, they are, people that you can hire as the operations manager in your company. There are also people that when your company gets larger, they hire them in as the chief operating officers. And they come in to help the CEO who has, whose mind is always going 1,000 miles a minute, where it's always, vision, let's go, new idea, let's go. But this person, takes the work from the CEO and say, hey, okay, I get that you want to go here. I know this is the vision and all that, but I'm going to put the pieces together to make sure that, integrating all the different things together to make sure that this vision that the CEO has can actually be achieved. So, these are like usually the second in command in the company. They're more of the, the integrator that comes to make things happen from an operations standpoint, while the CEO, goes driving with the vision. Yeah.
And so what I'm hearing you say is there are people out there who really love that aspect
Of course.
of business. Yeah.
Of
And then,
course.
so I guess I know my listeners run the gamut. I have solopreneurs, I have artists, I have people that work for companies, I have small business owners, I have inventors and creators. I have a nice wide range, but at the center of everything of my audience of Team PYP and my guests is this desire to show up and improve in life every single day and serve, servant leadership to put ourselves out there. And so who would make the decision to bring on SweetProcess to a business? Who is your ideal client?
So great question. Great questions. I will answer this in a bunch of ways. So what I've found is that if a company has less than 20 employees, it's typically the CEO or the owner of the business that is reaching out, because by this point they're overwhelmed. They just need to have a system in place where there's one single source of truth. So they're reaching out to us for SweetProcess. Now, when they have between 20 to, let's say, that about 50 to maybe 7,500 employees, they typically is the chief operating officer. They've literally hired somebody who their job is the head of operations, right? And that person is the one reaching out to us, looking for a tool to make their job easier, right? So the company is much larger. And then when you have between that, 100 to about 1,000 employees, there's even a step below the operations person, which is the operations manager or some manager in a specific department, is the one reaching out to us and say, hey, in my department, there's a lot of chaos. I need to make sure that, I have, things in place. And so they're bringing SweetProcess to come and, use within their department. And what usually happens is once they come to do their department as a manager and they like the results, other managers in the company start saying, oh, you guys are using this? And, they talk between themselves. And before you know, it's, landing and expanding and going to all the multiple different departments in the company because it was brought in by a manager. So the way I answer the question is that based on the size of the company is where we see different people reaching out to us.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, you've obviously created a valuable tool that is needed in business, again, because we are now living in two worlds. We're living in a digital world. We're living in the real world. And not that the digital world isn't real. I mean, we operate as humans in a natural world, but so much of our work has gone into the digital space. And there is a barrier. I'm sure you see it all the time. People resist technology or they're afraid of it. They don't understand it. They ask themselves, how is this really going to help me? And you with SweetProcess have developed a track record to show, hey, this is how this tool, if you implement this tool, really can improve your business and free you up so everybody can do their jobs more efficiently. You can really be the leader that you want to be, and grow the company or take it to a new category if it's a product-based or even a service-based. And I think it's fabulous that you had the foresight to if this company, what are you, 9 years old now? You said it started in 2013.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's great. Congrats on that, Owen, because we know the stats out there about small businesses. There's a lot of them that don't make it. And you clearly have. What's the one thing you love most about what you do?
One thing I love most is, being able to, most of the time when people come to us, I'm always trying to have, before we even jump into, doing a demo or whatever, I like to understand their business model and, what is it that they're trying to achieve in their business, what they're trying to do, and also then bring it down to the problem that brought them here. So just being able to have eyes on different types of business and how it all relates back to, hey, you can grow and scale this thing, be it a church, a bank, or whatever. You can grow and scale this and keep things moving the way you want it without having this. So it's always interesting to see the different, businesses that I come across and how this issue always plays a role.
Yeah. Yeah. There's that satisfaction in seeing it work for a company,
Yes.
to see that, hey, I created this tool and look what it's doing for them. They're happier. They're less stressed. They're making more money. They're serving more people. all those good things. Well, that's terrific. And I know, Owen, you've got a special offer for Team PYP. So first of all, share with us, where do you hang out online? And then how can listeners who want to check this out get a hold of that?
So if you want to connect with me personally, the best place to do that is go on LinkedIn and just type in my name, Owen McGab Enaohwo, and connect with me. I'm very open on LinkedIn. As long as you have a picture on your profile, I will connect, I will connect back with you. I mean, if you don't have a picture on your profile, I'm not.
Forget it.
LinkedIn is your resume, so we need to know who you are. So all jokes aside, right? So connect with me on LinkedIn, and we have an offer for the listener who's listening so far to this point who feels like they need to have that single source of truth where they can have procedures and all that in place. So, but if you go to our website, SweetProcess.com, by default, there is a 14-day trial of our software, but I want to give you something, an additional trial. So if you go to SweetProcess.com/PYP, again, sweet like candy, process like process.com/PYP. Just play your position, right? So SweetProcess.com/PYP, you would have additional trial where instead of getting a 14-day trial, you get an extended trial that will be 28 days, just because you've listened to the interview all the way to this point. What do you think about that, Mary Lou?
I think that's phenomenal, Owen. Thank you so much. And I always encourage my team, take advantage of these amazing offers that guests put together for us here at Play Your Position. It's generous. There's no obligation and not trying to get you to, buy into something that you don't want. Take it for a test drive, like a car, or go try, when you go to the mall or you order clothes from wherever and you get your box, you try them on. Some of them are going to work and some of them aren't. No big deal. It's really finding the right fit. And this could be the tool that makes the difference. We're coming to the end of 2022, which is hard to believe. And a new year will be upon us. And maybe 2023 is the year that you and your company take charge of your SOPs and stop being crazy all the time of what we don't know who does what around here. That's fantastic. And this has been a great conversation, Owen. Before we say goodbye, would you be willing to share with us a couple of books that have been really critical to you and your growth as a leader? It might have been something you read a long time ago. It might be something you're reading right now.
So, two books that come to mind. The first one is Work the System by Sam Carpenter. It's a great book and basically explains how to, get your business in line and how to work on your business instead of in your business, and, gives you his own framework on how he did it with his own company. The other book that, I would suggest to the listener is called Built to Sell by John Warrillow. And again, I don't know what your incentive or your reason to you be working on a business might be, but I will wager to guess that you might want to sell it eventually, right? So this book is all about how to build a business that you can actually sell for the highest amount, possible. And it all brings you back to the need to have systems in place and have these documents, procedures, and processes in place. So these two books are a good suggestion for me.
And those are great suggestions. And I'll have links to those books, team. You know that on Owen's show notes page at pyppodcast.com, along with a link to connect with him on LinkedIn and take advantage of his generous 28-day free trial of SweetProcess and see what it's about. Just go in there and check it out. And you might discover it's exactly what you need. And Owen, I've just loved our conversation today. You taught me some things. You got me thinking about my own business, and that's always a wonderful gift that I get. And I wish you continued success on your journey as a leader and someone who really cares about helping businesses improve. It's clear that that's your heart is right there.
I'm glad to be here, and thanks for having me as a guest. I appreciate it.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes. But leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.